Bridging the Gap, Chronic Illness, Mental Health, and the Human Experience. I'm your host, Karina Shardell. I'm a clinical social worker and doctoral student. This podcast explores the intersection of physical health, mental health, and the lived experiences of individuals navigating chronic illness. And today I am honored to be joined by Ms. Jodi Brewer. Jodi is a clinical social worker who lives with rheumatoid arthritis. Giving her both professional insight and personal experience with chronic illness, Jodi has graciously agreed to share her journey with us, and I think many listeners will find hope, validation, and understanding through her story. So Jodi, thank you very much for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying thanks for having me.
Yes. And before we dive into any specific questions, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you'd like listeners to know about who you are?
So I'm 42. I have a 16-year-old who is a creative little spitball. She attends a gifted and talented art school in Fayette County. I am a CSW as well, and I do therapy for people in addiction and recovery at a medication management clinic. I've been doing that for about 2 years now, and I absolutely love and have passion for my job. Yeah. Oh, and I also do some private practice therapy with Trauma Informed Care Center as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing that with us. So you're definitely bringing a lot of experience to the table. So not just experience with lived chronic illness, but also kind of as an expert with your experience as a social worker. So I'll just start by asking if you could tell us a little bit about your chronic illness journey.
I was 25 when I was diagnosed. I had just given birth to my daughter. I was actually, she was just over a month old, and I had taken her to visit my mom in Montreal and was supposed to fly home, and I felt like one of my shoulders had I thought my rotator cuff had torn, and I was like, there's no way I can pack all of my things and carry this newborn through an airport. And I remember I had to extend that vacation, if you'll call it, twice because I couldn't get through the airport with her, and I had no idea what was going on. And so I've had it for 17 years now.
Wow.
I think that math is right.
Would you say life before the diagnosis looked a little bit different?
Oh, 100%. Do you know what spoon theory is? Have you heard of that before? I can explain it for the listeners. Okay, so I found spoon theory decades ago after I was diagnosed, and it's this theory that, we each are given a set of spoons to get us through our day, and people with chronic illness typically have less spoons. And so it's not that you can't do those things, it's just you have to kind of guard how many spoons you're willing to give out because you're going to run out faster. And I didn't have that which I was only 25, but I didn't have that before that. It was push hard, go hard, and you didn't really have to think about the outcome of how you spent your energy.
Wow, yeah, that's a great theory. I've never heard of that. Can you tell us a little bit about the diagnostic process for you?
Yeah, so when I got home, I continued, and I don't know if you know a whole lot about RA, but a lot of people in the beginning, the disease, and I'm still this way, it moves bilaterally, and it doesn't necessarily settle into one joint or another right away, and mine still hasn't settled. And so it was just kind of moving throughout my body. It was, my jaw, my hands, my shoulders, and I had no idea what was going on. So I went to my primary care doctor, and she at first thought it was, oh my goodness, what is that called? They had mentioned lupus, but they had also gout. She thought it was gout. So they did some blood work, and my rheumatoid numbers came back really high, and she was like, this is outside of my field. And so they sent me to a rheumatologist, and that diagnosis came really fast for me. I know that I'm very fortunate. That's not the case for a lot of people, but my blood work was really high. And that original rheumatologist actually told me I had a really aggressive form based on my blood work, and that I should not buy a house that wasn't a ranch style because she thought I would be in a wheelchair by 50. So that was terrifying and deflating, and a lot to hear at 25.
Yeah, how did you feel emotionally being diagnosed at that time?
I was angry. I'm going to be real honest. I was, our body is supposed to be the one we should be able to trust ourselves if you can't trust anyone else. And I felt betrayed by myself. And that is, it's mentally exhausting. And I remember, this is so not social worker therapist of me, but I was so angry one night and I had a flare in my hand, and I just I didn't really punch the wall, but like I hit the wall by my bed because I was hurting so bad and I couldn't sleep. You only do that once when you're flaring because you're hurting, and then you do something stupid and you hurt even more. And it just, I had to recognize that I was angry at myself and allow myself to be angry. Um, but emotionally, I was just exhausted for a while because it's like that guilt shame. Like, why are you so angry? You didn't cause this. But there's not a lot you can do about it, right? Like, and how do you release it?
Absolutely. And I'm epileptic myself, so I understand where you're coming from with that, like not trusting your body and just being angry about it. I also have the shoulder dislocations just from years of seizures, so I know how you feel there too. It's like sometimes you're just trying to sleep comfortably and I don't know, my arm will dislocate in the middle of the night or something. It's so frustrating, very
The
painful.
lack of sleep is honestly the worst thing for me sometimes. Like, I can handle the pain, but I am an emotional mess when I do not sleep well.
Yes. Um, so whenever you were being diagnosed, do you feel like it was there any social workers involved in that diagnosis, like to help you cope mentally or anything like that?
No, and I really wish that my doctor would have told me to go to therapy.
Mhm.
Now, within the last 5 years, I see my own therapist every now and then because my my mom is now diagnosed. And it's funny because after she was diagnosed, she was like, I wish I would have realized what you were going through. I don't think anyone recognized. I had a hard time, like I attached to my kid, but if you can imagine being in pain and trying to put your kid in a crib and you're kind of having to drop them, not unsafely, but you can't get all the way down. It made those infant months so much harder on being a good mom because I was exhausted and angry and tired, and it's obviously not my kid's fault, but it was a lot. And so I think if one person, and obviously I'm in the field, I of all people should have known, hey, I need support through this, but I didn't. And it would have been life changing for me because my family is supportive. They're always willing to listen. My husband at the time was willing to listen, but it, people don't, at some point you get tired of talking about it, right? And you feel like a burden to the people you love. Um, and you kind of just start holding it all in, um, because they hear it over and over again. Like, it's the same thoughts, it's the same repetitive pattern. And so I wish someone would have been like, hey, this is a social worker. We know you have this new diagnosis. We think you should work with her. And I would have jumped at that. And I don't really know why, even as a mental health professional, that I didn't think to do that for myself.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We that's just what we do. We give all of our cup and water to everybody else and don't leave any for ourselves. Yes. Whenever it comes to like relationships and support systems, would you say your condition impacted those at all?
Not on their part. I think I think it was more on mine. I don't like to feel like a burden. It's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. And so asking for help, um, even though there are days I can't take my own bra off and I know that I need to ask for that help, I have to work towards that, right? Um, Taking care of my kid when she was little and just being absolutely exhausted and not asking for help definitely impacted that relationship. And when we still have my daughter and I have a great relationship, but what could have it been if I was willing if I was healthy, just if that makes sense.
So I'm definitely seeing a strong, independent woman here who wasn't willing to give herself a little bit of grace and kind of
Yeah.
meet herself where she was at.
And I still struggle with that. It's better now than it was. And I think that comes with age because I don't really have a choice.
So whenever I'm going to kind of switch gears here, but whenever this is going to be some questions a little bit tailored around being a social worker living with chronic illness. So as a social worker living with chronic illness, how has your condition affected your work, education, daily life? Have you had to make any accommodations?
So I struggle sometimes with getting my notes done. When my hands flare, it's really hard to type. And where I work, we just don't have the technology to do like talk to text. And I could pay for that stuff myself, but I'm a social worker. And so sometimes my notes aren't done in 24 hours, and I just message my billing supervisor, and I'm like, "Hey, I literally cannot. I'm finger pecking today." It doesn't happen that often. Like if this was a reoccurring thing, we would have to figure out accommodations. So it's rare, but it definitely affects my ability to like stay seated all day as a therapist. I find for me personally, holding the same position, whether that's sitting or standing or typing, is when I kind of get locked up and tense. And so, I do have to remind myself to move or change positions or, if it wasn't weird and awkward, I'd have two walking, or if my office was even big enough for it, I'd love to have two walking pads in here for me and the client to talk while we're doing therapy. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely some accommodations there. Um, I will also say like the brain fog. As a professional, when you can't think of words, whether that's as in my social work role, I volunteer a lot on like boards, volunteer, committees, those kind of things. It it makes me feel less than stupid, imposter syndrome. And it's not that it's a lack of education or a lack of knowledge. I literally just cannot find the words inside of my brain. And I feel like everyone is judging me when it's probably just me judging me. So that, and when I was studying for my CSW, because I hadn't been in school for 2 decades, I felt slower. And back then, before I was diagnosed, everything just came to me. I wasn't the person that had to study. And so that's been frustrating. It's just been a little bit of a change to recognize that the chronic illness is more than just the pain. It's mental, it's fatigue, it's emotions, it's a lot of things wrapped up into one thing.
Yes, and that's where our like hope and resilience comes in. I know I experienced the same thing with the mental fog because of medications. I
Mhm.
think I had to take my CSW test probably 3 times. I ended up having a seizure on one of the
Oh
days,
shit. Sorry.
and but I think it, we have this choice when we have a chronic illness. We can get caught up in our symptoms, or we can choose the resilience and hope path.
Mhm.
I really think that's kind of the way you've gone.
Yeah, and I do think we're social workers. There's empathy there already, right? But working with patients who have chronic illness or anything that's similar, it makes me more empathetic, more in tune, um, more understanding, because when you talk to someone that doesn't have chronic illness, they don't, while they can be empathetic and they can listen, not understanding makes a big difference. So for me to understand what they're going through, I do think it helps on a professional level too. Not
Yes,
that I would wish this on my worst enemy, okay? Social workers don't need to have this to be good.
I do. I think I agree with that. I think it adds like a level of a depth and awareness and attunement that maybe someone else may not have.
Right.
Um, what coping skills have been most helpful for you?
So I like to stay active. Not only I find the more I move, the less I hurt, but it's one of those like things where I'm already kind of hurting, so I have to push myself mentally to get over that hump to keep going, right? You can't stop, or you kind of just let it own you. And so learning to not let my disease define me and keep me from doing the things that I would have done despite having it, right? I'm very active. I play sports. I love the outdoors, and that's my mental health too. Like, the more I'm in nature, the healthier my brain is. The healthier my brain is, the more I can push through the pain. And not that I push through the pain to the point where I'm like injuring my joints or, causing further permanent damage. It keeps me aware of the things that I need to be around because I am in tune to my body. And therapy. When it's the hardest, I do reach out to my therapist to have somebody to just complain to, because sometimes that's needed.
And what does self-compassion look like for you on, let's say you're having a hard day, it's really flaring up. What does self-compassion look like to you?
Again, not letting, I'm really big on not letting it define who I am as a person. And so not allowing myself to be, I, I'm allowed to take breaks because I'm tired. I'm allowed to take breaks because I deserve it, right? It's not about the disease. It's about my mental health. It's about the ability to preserve and do my job beyond just having rheumatoid arthritis. And so that's kind of the compassion that I take towards myself, is allowing myself to take breaks because I need it despite having a flare or not. And learning to ask for help. And I know as a social worker that shouldn't be a big thing, but it is. It's hard. And it has been a growth for 17 years, and I get better every year.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One of the main reason I wanted to start this podcast is just to bring some awareness to that gap, like with mental health care and physical health problems. Um, and I think one of the biggest things is people with chronic illness, we just don't know to even bring that to our doctor. I met with someone yesterday who said doctors, they're focused on their lane, they're focused on the physical, so they don't even know to give us referrals to mental health. That's not their lane. So it's kind of up to us as the patient to tell them and speak up for ourselves and advocate for ourselves. So that's kind of like my goal here, is to help people know that we can advocate for ourselves, and there are resources if we are
I
aware
do
of it.
wish that we would educate the medical professionals more, though, right?
Right.
It's their job to be recognizing, hey, I just diagnosed you with this life-changing thing, and you don't have to do it alone. Because most people, I mean, mental health unfortunately is already inaccessible as it is, right? Like, we don't make it easy. We don't, a lot of people can't afford it. And so I do think that it's the job of all medical professionals to make sure that people are aware that there are people like us that they can talk to.
And hopefully someday we will accomplish that.
Yeah, it's not going to be today, I know.
Yeah. Uh, One of my last questions for you is just what advice would you give to someone who's been recently diagnosed with a chronic illness? What would you wish someone would have told you?
Let yourself grieve. You have this plan for your future. It's no different than death or divorce or, these traumatic things that happen to people throughout life. We have pictures in our head of the way that things were supposed to be. And when you get diagnoses that change that path, it hurts. And it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to miss that person that you were. And you know, you're not your diagnosis. It doesn't have to become your identity. Um, it just changes your life a little bit, and that is sad.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, is there anything we haven't discussed today that you feel is important for listeners to hear?
I think I've already said it multiple times, but like your dreams don't have to be defined by your limits caused by a chronic illness. You just have to learn to adapt.
Thank you. And Jodi, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for making yourself vulnerable on here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. I know conversations like this is really going to be what brings awareness and help bridge the gap between physical and mental health while reminding people that living with chronic illness, they're not alone. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of Bridging the Gap. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who may benefit from hearing it. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Remember that healing is not always about curing. It's often about learning how to live fully within our human experience. And thank you.
Thank you.